If you have the type of gene that I do, our body's potential to lose weight through exercise is less compared to other people. We can lose weight through exercise, but there are other strategies that will be far more effective, like what we eat, limiting our refined carbohydrates such as sugar and bread, and managing stress. We can still exercise for muscle strength, but exercise is not our go-to weight loss strategy. I'm Jules Walters, a health coach for busy women, helping you to become the CEO of your health. Yes, you got it, the Chief Executive Officer, the one who's in charge, the one who owns it. I've spent decades in healthcare as an entrepreneur and a CEO, and what I've learned is that many of the answers to a long and healthy life are up to us. I'm a big believer in the power of women to adapt. Let's face it, we've done it before. So my message to you is that I absolutely believe that you can become the CEO of your health. You are the expert on you. As a health coach, I've seen many women make the journey from being fed up and frustrated to being empowered and encouraged. They've done it by making small tweaks to their habits that together make all the difference. I call them Nano Health Habits, and I've written a book about it called, strangely, Nano Health Habits. And these are small steps which, built one on top of the other, can transform our health. And that's what this podcast, The Health Refresh, is all about. If you're a busy woman who wants the best for herself and her family, and is not prepared to accept that what you have now is as good as it gets, then you're in the right place. Welcome, my friend. Welcome to the Health Refresh team. Today I'm going to talk about a few genes in our DNA that affect how we store and use fat. Last week I shared how our DNA affects our metabolism overall. You see, our health is a combination of our environment, what we eat, how often we move, our sleep, and our levels of stress, plus our genes. We have about 20,000 genes, fewer than was expected before we knew the final number, but enough to make us uniquely human. And we've learned in recent years that some genes in particular influence our relationship with fat. We call them the fat controllers. I completed my degree in molecular genetics when the Human Genome Project was underway in the early 2000s, and it really felt like we were entering into a new era of genetic science, which we were. Once we had the complete map of the human genome, the next 20 years saw many breakthroughs in the understanding of disease. What goes wrong when one gene changes at random and we end up with a wonky protein that doesn't work as it should? That was the right place to start in genetics, looking at disease, as the potential was so enormous to save lives. More recently, research has turned to how genetics affects normal, healthy people. And you may have heard of companies like 23andMe and Ancestry, which can help you to understand where you come from geographically by looking at your DNA. And then in just the last decade, companies like 3x4 Genetics and the DNA Company have made more accessible understanding what's in our DNA and how it can influence our everyday health. And that includes our metabolism. I mentioned before one gene in the fat controller group called FTO. I talked a little about that last week. And like all genes, we inherit one copy of this one from mum and one from dad. And if both versions of our FTO gene are of a particular type, then we have a 70% higher chance of being obese than the rest of the population. I have one of those genes, thankfully not both, just one variant, but it still means I have to watch my weight carefully. It's thought that FTO increases our appetite or reduces our energy output. But the good news is that FTO responds well to nutrition and exercise. So I make sure that I move regularly. Daily walks and strength training help a lot. And today I want to talk about another gene in this fat controller group called ADRB2. That's short for a beta-2 adrenergic receptor. So we'll stick with ADRB2. Its job is to provide the blueprint for the production of a protein that manages energy release from fat cells. Now, I also have a change in this gene, which means I'm not very good at releasing energy from fat. Once I develop fat, it's really hard for me to get rid of it. We need energy from fat just to keep ourselves warm. And what's interesting is that I much prefer warmer weather. I really feel the cold. I'm certainly no Arctic explorer, and that ties up with my genetic profile. I'm not very good at releasing energy from fat, even to keep warm. So knowing that, what does it mean for my health? And what can I do day to day to work with my genetic potential, just as you will work with yours? Well, remember, health is a combination of genes plus environment. What we eat, how we move and sleep, and how stressed we are. Well, firstly, exercise is not the best tool for me in terms of reducing fat, given my genetic profile. I should still exercise to keep my muscles strong, but in terms of weight loss, what will work better for me and be more successful in the short and the long term is to focus instead on my nutrition. Limit my intake of refined carbohydrates like sugar and bread, and manage stress. Stress can lead to weight gain, so making sure I have strategies to wind down is really important for weight loss for me. If you're like me and have a variant at this gene, ADRB2, you're more likely to have trouble losing weight. And I think that's useful to know. It means it's not your fault that weight loss is a challenge. It's written in your genes. Now, that doesn't mean it's your destiny. Remember, it's genes plus our environment that makes our health. We can't change our genes, but we can change our environment. So that's where the real potential is, in matching our environment to our genetic profile. So if you have a change in the gene that I do, our body's potential to lose weight through exercise is less compared to other people. We can lose weight through exercise, but there are other strategies that will be more effective, like limiting what we eat, limiting refined carbohydrates, and managing stress. So let's reflect for a minute. Isn't that great to know that it's not your fault that weight loss is a challenge? And there's a reason for that. So let's stop beating ourselves up about it. Genetic data really is practical news you can use. And it's another example of how knowing our genetic makeup influences what we do day to day. We'll be looking at fat storage, appetite, and different muscle types in a new coaching program I'll be launching in the next week. We'll be covering how your DNA has wired your body to react in a certain way to food and exercise. It's going to be highly personalized based on your DNA, and it will help you to become active and not passive when it comes to your health. Being able to access this knowledge and data will encourage and empower you to become the CEO of your health. And my program will help to explain what the data means and what lifestyle changes you might consider. We know that change is hard. It's why so many of us start with New Year's Eve resolutions, and by February, many of us have already given up. But I believe with a little support and guidance, you can step into being the strong, powerful, and resourceful woman that you are. Meanwhile, I've created a guide to help you take 4 simple steps to tackle midlife weight, which can be really annoying. And you can start taking action today, even before you know your genetic profile. And you can find that resource at juleswalters.com/tackle. That's juleswalters.com/tackle. It's a free resource and I hope you find it useful. So that's it for this week. Before we go, I do need to make clear, if I haven't already, that I am not a doctor. I'm a health coach, and my lane is lifestyle and how it affects our health. If you have a medical condition or suspect you might be developing one, then a doctor is the right person to see. Okay, that's the legal bit done. Next week, we'll be diving into more examples of how our environment and our DNA interact to support our health. So see you right here next week, same time, same place.